And so I'm absolutely delighted that she's going to talk this afternoon on Passionate About Clematis.
President, Chairman, members and their friends, and the young people in this hall, all this wonderful technology at work. And here I am, asked by the chairman, Vivian, and Beverly, the events coordinator, to talk about Passionate About Clematis in 1 hour. As much as I would love to condense it, almost 40 years without hiding my age. It took me, and I'm still learning, and I'll continue to learn. In organizing the thoughts for this talk, can you all hear me?
Yeah. Yes.
I was trying to figure out at what level I should pitch it. So bear with me, and I've asked a couple of my friends in this audience, if you know a lot more than I do, just pretend you're not hearing me. So that I can cater for all levels as I was catered for 40 years ago. So I'm going to go through it in a way as a teacher would do, but if you don't like that approach, ask me to try something else. Is that fair enough?
Yes, I do.
I also want to remind you, I come from a culture where we respect age, experience, and wisdom. And I continue to do so. And therefore, most of the plants I've selected and I'm going to show you are plants that came out of such wonderful geniuses. Amateurs, some of them, who waited years and years to be able to say, I've got a plant that's worth being grown, not only in Britain, not only in Ireland or elsewhere, but across the world. That is what selecting a plant is about. Having that wonderful acute eye to be able to say, this is so good, so reliable. I have tried it, tested it, it hasn't reverted, and therefore it should be shared. And that is what gardening is about. I live in a different time. I don't know about you. I have now come to accept that is the way life is. In 2010, 2011, Plant Finder, I sat down and counted 895 cultivars of clematis. Today I'm told, with my wonderful friend here, Mike Brown, and I had to write an article for the Plantsman, suddenly it appeared we have 300 species and 5,000 cultivars. Even if I lived 4 times my age, would I manage to grow them all? Do I need them all? Do I need to even look at them or buy them? And my answer is no. And on that note, Cliff, where are you? Can I? So this is what I'm doing. Tried and tested plants. And paying tribute in my lifetime to wonderful plantsmen, including our president and others who have gone before us. And this is my tribute to them, that they gave us these wonderful plants. And then, of course, the species. Ready to go, Cliff? As a child in my parents' garden, this is the plant I fell in love with. It's a cannonball tree. Where do I come from? I was born in Ceylon, Sri Lanka, and most people know that's where I came paint up, so I'm sorry. So, Brian, next time, if there is a next time, born in Ceylon, Sri Lanka, but most of my life was spent between Britain and Ireland. And Ireland, I married an Irishman, and therefore Ireland became my home for 46 years. I went to college between England and Ireland as well. All right? So in Ceylon, Sri Lanka, did you see the last night?
Yes.
It reminded me of a cobra's head. Am I right, Mr. Lancaster?
Yes.
And the fragrance at 4 o'clock was something else. And I would come home, and after a cup of tea, that is where I would go. And then all those beautiful flowers become these cannonballs. And when these balls fall, the smell is something else. Terrible. So this is to attract all sorts of things, to come and pollinate, bring it out and fertilize and all that. So there's a reason. And if you see all those balls are on the lower stem. So this is fascinating. You know, as a child, the nature study class used to be fun. And then as a young teenager, went to the botanical gardens in Ceylon, Sri Lanka, and I fell in love with this tree, Amherstia nobilis. So what I'm trying to say to you is, my first love would be trees. And as a child, as a shorter person, all these girls, you play games under the tree. Wonderful tree. Little did I realize, Lady Amherst will become one of my wonderful plantspersons for sending Clematis montana to Britain. So this plant is named for her, but she was instrumental in sending that Clematis montana from India to Britain. And then I arrived in Europe and Britain and Ireland, and I arrived in Trinity College in Dublin, and I went to Mount Usher in search of this tree. At this stage, I had gotten to know the young plant hunter, Ernest Wilson. And I would love to go and tell you the story, but you go and find out. It's a very interesting story. Dr. Augustine Henry found this tree in China and told somebody here to go and look for this plant, and Ernest Wilson arrived. The day before he arrived, they had cut down the tree. But he found the tree afterwards, and he recorded in his diary, I couldn't sleep tonight. I would have screamed my head off, but that's all he said. So the handkerchief tree. So I continue to love my trees, which might explain why I adore and respect this gentleman president, Mr. Lancaster, his love of trees, his love of shrubs. So this is where all my gardening passion started. And then, as a young child at school, and then a young teenager at school, reading botany, I learned about fruit and seed dispersals, and in search of that, we went to Clematis vitalba. And at the moment, Clematis vitalba, even coming here and going to Hestercombe yesterday, the roadside is littered. And yet when I went to Holland, they're on sale. And I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe. Dark May, this gone May, Clematis vitalba in containers being sold. And there on the roadside in Dublin and here, you find Traveller's Joy. And there are children who smoke the vines. There are children who play with it. And my orthopedic surgeon takes sections of the vines of Clematis to find replacement for hip surgery. They are working on all the natural things, and he told me they have done tremendous studies on Clematis vitalba. But as a botany student, I was interested in the old man's beard, fruit and seed dispersal, and then I took the seeds and put it under the electron microscope, and you can see the seed heads. So in growing Clematis and falling in love with it, it is not just the flowers, it's not just the foliage or the vines, or their disobedient nature. They're all over the place. I have passionate gardeners here who are so beautifully manicured, tidied gardens. But I dare look for a manicured garden with my passion for Clematis. And here is your man, Ernest Wilson. On the left, you see Clematis montana rubens, which was what that was introduced by Ernest Wilson. And when my research grant was only £30, I paid 5 shillings 6 for those who can remember the old currency in Dublin to buy this plant. And I was living in a garden flat. And the landlord said, garden away. So I planted this Clematis montana rubens. And on the left-hand side is what you see I planted. On the right-hand side, you see what Mr. Ernest Wilson introduced. And over the years, so many plants, which are originally introduced as special plants, I hope Roy will agree with me, over a period of time, either growing through seeds or growing through everything, they have destroyed the original species that was introduced. So see the difference? But whether they are good, bad, or indifferent, so the botanist, the taxonomist, one of the priorities is to pull the plants into a family. It's a pity that we're not teaching taxonomy as we used to. My O-levels, my A-levels, I had to do all that. So all the plants, the clematis, that family, is the Ranunculacea or a buttercup. And tribute to Sue Ward, who is in the audience, for doing this beautiful diagram of the frog. So the family of buttercups. And I'm just getting ready for this lecture. For the first time, they were talking about anemone clematis. I hadn't come across that before. They were referring to Montana on this internet, as anemone clematis. And there is your anemone, calca, and delphinium. Look at the shapes. I wanted to look at the stamens, and I wanted to see the form of all this. And yet we pull them all into one family of Ranunculacea, Rana frog. And to this day, my young friend here, Mike Brown, the man who holds up the base of Clematis collection, would agree with me. We haven't really come across a large flowered cultivar in that yellow. They are still trying. Not that I want one. And then I go to New Zealand and look what I find. Ranunculus dialia. And then look at this. The Aquilegia, again, the foothills of the Cascades, the western state in America. But Adonis bonalis. Look at it. And then, of course, the Hellebores and the Hepatitis. So as Brian Matthew, wonderful plantsman, Hellebores and Lord, said, we have enough plants in the Ranunculacea family alone to keep generations of Garden Plant Society members interested in studying. There are so many thousands of plants, forgetting about the cultivars. And then this very special clematis, both my wonderful mentor, Dr. Martin Johnson from Sweden, and then Christopher Gray Wilson, have written about this clematis alternator from China, and it's a very supremely good example for teaching botany students about buds, shape, form. When I'm teaching botany, I will talk about this. It's all very important, but that is, while it looks very handsome on the screen, Dr. Magnus Johnson gave me a plant. It grew, it flowered, but I'm not so sure I would want it in my garden. Rather, it's not a very handsome plant in that sense, but the flowers, from a botanical point of view, is very interesting. So, the buttercup family, which Brian talked about, the Ranunculacea group, caters for, the clematis belongs to that, 300 species and 5,000 cultivars. I'm not going there. But if you look at the whole genus of clematis, if you look at the form, the shape, the size, are they upright, are they pendulous, you will find all sorts of things in that. So there is as they see some television programs, they say, there's one plant for everyone in the audience. You can choose whatever you like. But any time I go to flower shows in Britain, be it Chelsea, be Everybody walks around with a bag of a clematis, large flower. Everybody is sticking out, large flowers. But when you're young, that's what you like. So I decided to do the very rough classification of the genus with the large flower cultivars on the left, small flower species and cultivars. So when I finished my passion for Clematis montana bar rubens as a young student, the next clematis I grew was Nellie Morrison. Everybody grew Nellie Morrison. And now it's all very fashionable. If you mention Nellie Morrison, they look at you almost say, are you all right in your head? And just 3 months ago, a friend of mine in Dublin asked me to come and have a look at the garden. And who do I see hiding behind a, kind of, if I may say so, overgrown shrub and tree? Nellie Morrison. Never pruned in years. Growing away merrily. And on the right-hand side, I got a cutting of this plant, Cerosa barcopurus freckles, from Suffolk, Newmarket, Suffolk. And I grew it in Dublin, and just a week ago, that is what I have. In fact, it is supposed to be winter flowering clematis. It has come into flower by August in my garden, and will continue in stages right up to January, February, and then the seedless, of course. So, for horticultural purposes, with all these 5,000 cultivars hanging around, they are split into 15 cultivar groups. This is not a botanical classification, just an ordinary, and anybody who was interested in it, go and refer to the International Clematis Register. And 3 of these groups, Integrifolia, Heraclifolia, and Framina, will give you the herbaceous clematis. Now that is another big discussion. Maybe another year, Hardy Plant Society will discuss. When do you call a plant herbaceous? You expect a herbaceous plant, if I may be bold enough to say that, to die down in the winter months and grow again. But now, with the weather changes and all that, all sorts of things happening, and with clematis, the herbaceous clematis need to be redefined. That's another day's story. If you have any questions on that, talk to Mr. Mike Brown, who holds a national collection of herbaceous clematis. So we take the large flower cultivars, and basically the 15 cultivar groups are based on the pruning methods. And every book that is being written will talk about the pruning being so difficult. There's nothing difficult about pruning. Whether it's trees, I don't prune trees. Trees should never be pruned. They should grow naturally. Shrubs should be allowed to grow beautifully and only shade when necessary. But with the clematis or any other flowering shrubs and all, anything that comes into flower before June, you don't go and hack the old wood. If you did that, you'd lose all the flowers. So any clematis that come into flower before June, before mid-June, don't go with your secateurs, don't threaten it. So on the pruning group, based on that, the large flower cultivars can be flowering on old wood and they belong to group 2. And the late ones, take your secateurs or pruners or whatever and have fun. So we take among the large flower cultivars, we take the early ones, and here we are. That from Japan. Mr. Ozawa was a fantastic clementarian and a rosarian and all the Arians. And he sent me this plant for trialing, and one year it just flowered its heart out. I find that some of them flower and then they get tired and they go back to sleep for a while. I just don't worry about it. But this year, particularly a couple of years ago, I think, I not only had the single flower, but the double flowers. For those who love that color, by March, April, May, in a sheltered spot. And then Miss Bacon. I grow this plant with Clematis violet purple. The seed heads on the left of the white flowers belong to Clematis violet purple, and then Miss Bateman skimmed through it. Look at it. Very seldom I would venture out to either of them. So in combining clematis plants, you must you do so according to the pruning group. If you combine the pruning group 1 plant that comes into flower early with pruning group 3 plant that comes into flower late and take the secateurs, where do you start? So when you're growing plant, and books will tell you, grow clematis this way, that way, but do they tell you anything else? And then we talk about cartwheel arrangement. There is Raymond Edison's introduction of Guernsey cream, a very good example if you look at the center of the stamens and the way the tepals and sepals are all arranged. I cannot go into all those details, but most of the buttercup family, the flowers, we don't have the proper sepals, they're coming to, or proper petals, they're coming to sepals or tepals. So you see the cartwheel arrangement. And then for those who love double flowers, as I got older, doubles just went out the window. They became too heavy. You know, I'm not so sure whether it's something to do with your own eyes, I don't know. But if you love double flowers, by all means, there are plenty of them. Although I don't particularly like the one Clematis Josephine. And then the late flowering clematis on the new wood. I couldn't beat this. In my garden, I've grown for 25 years. Each year, about February, I'll go, or March, I'll cut it down, and each year, does the same thing to me. And then, in an English garden, John Glover, I think, found this combination because roses and clematis have similar growing requirements, be it soil, be it fertilizer, and you can grow clematis through roses and reach this wonderful result. If you like that kind of thing, by all means. But I do not, after 40 years of growing clematis, tell anybody to grow clematis willy-nilly with other plants. You couldn't do that. You must be very careful who you grow with whom. Here is another one, a late flowering, mid to late flowering, pearl de jour. A lot of people tell me they lose it in the early years to clematis wilt. Don't let it worry you, don't let it touch your mind. If it wilts, cut the wilt from the plant away and leave it there. It will strengthen itself, grow out of wilt, and that is what I get year after year. Clematis pearl de jour. So ultimately all I'm trying to tell you is to select those that you think are good growers, good strong plants, and they would last a number of years. I'll come to that later on about this, how the longevity of clematis. For the time being, anything I'm showing here has done well for 25 years. That is all I can tell you. Now, I remember a plantman having a kind of a disagreement with me when I said I grow my pearl de jour beside a conifer, and he said he couldn't do it. And I asked him, had he done it himself? He said no. But then he said, the books tell you not to do it. So I decided then I must do it and show it to him. And that's what I did. At the moment I've taken the conifer out, not because it wasn't doing well. I want, again, I don't know about you all as gardeners. There comes a stage, a loss of a plant is a bonus for trying a new one. So I don't shed tears anymore. So what, I've lost a plant. I'll buy a new one and see how does that be. So it's an excuse for adding a new one. So I took out the conifer to plant a couple of hostas at the base of the pearl de jour, and it has done well. And I decided to plant a hosta praying hands. So when I come out of my front door, the hosta prays to me, or I pray to the hosta. There's always a method in your madness. And this year, for the first time of me growing this Clematis Ville de Lyon, am I making sense to you? Good. This year, my friends here from Dublin and I, we are developing a garden for the Alzheimer's Society Daycare Respite Centre in Dublin. And we have erected a pergola, a long pergola, on which we grow clematis and roses. But what else? So, oh yes, what else? We also grow jasmine. I planted this Ville de Lyon, and I'm telling you, considering People think it always rains in Ireland. I'm sorry, we have had no rain for months on end. The ground is all flat. And there was Ville de Leon. Every time I go back to this garden in Dublin, Ville de Leon is flowering. And yet, Ranunculacea, members of the Ranunculacea family, moisture loving. They don't want their feet drowned in water, but they need to have X amount of moisture. And there was this Ville de Leon, flowering away merrily, maybe with once a week of watering. And still in flower when I took that photograph and I came out, it was still in flower, a jolly good cultivar. Ernest Markham, on the other hand, if you choose to buy Ernest Markham, lovely red, it tends to be flower shy. And I remember Raymond Edison saying, move it to a very sunny south-facing wall, Mary, which I did. And yes, Ernest Markham flourishes with a lot of sun. This plant came from Estonia. It was shown at Chelsea, Romantica, bred and introduced by a wonderful plantsman or clematarian, Kivistic. And he sent it to me for trialing in Dublin. And people do complain it tends to get a lot of mildew. Now I have learned over a period of time of gardening in very small space, where you congest the plant and there's not enough wind movement, mildew is very dominant. So I planted any plant that is prone to mildew, be it rose, be it clematis or anything, in an area where the wind gently wafts through the foliage and thereby minimizing mildew. Because I don't use any chemicals. So Romantica is no problem. It's lovely. And one of my ambitions, if I live long enough, is to grow that with a golden foliage plant. Should be rather glamorous. So now we've seen late and early flowering, large flower cultivars. If you still want the blousy big ones, by all means have two. Then we come to the small flowered species, and I'm convinced this has a lot to do with this love of species, love of pendulous flowers, love of small flowers has to do with, I'm only speaking for myself, aging process. As you get older, your tastes change, and you want something much more demure, much more quiet, not like Mary Toomey's carrying voice, just quiet. And flowers on old wood, pruning group 1, and flowers on new wood. I know you couldn't take it all, but just to give you an overview, that is all I'm doing. And I decided to separate the pruning group 1 to make it easy for both my students and gardeners to understand. The evergreens, put them all into one group, and then you have the Atatine group, the alpinas, macrophyllus, and all those lovely ones, early flowering ones. And then you have the plants that grow on new wood, which you would of course include the herbaceous plants. There's another one the Hardy Plant Society must do, definitions of herbaceous plants, shrubs and subshrubs. When do you call a plant a subshrub? There's a whole heap of things we need to learn, revise the definitions, not necessarily because we are looking for botanical treatise on it, but just to get us to understand, according to the climate, according to the weather, what is happening. So these are some of the examples depending on the pruning group. So small flower clematis, early flowering. You have the Armandii, the Serosa, the Fosteri, all of the evergreen, and then you have the Atatine group of the alpinas and all that. And there's a wonderful selection, wonderful. And early flowering groups. Every month in my garden there is somebody in flower. So it's a way you choose them. And a good gardener will understand when a plant has established and outgrown its space, then you gently prune it soon after flowering, so that the new shoots will come out, ripened and ready for flowering the following year. This is common sense gardening. That is what gardening is about. Observation. When I started growing clematis and all, number 1, I had no books. Number 2, I had no money. So I just had to teach myself by common sense observation what's happening among plants. This came from Japan. It's a pity it's not available in Britain and Ireland, from Mr. Ozawa. He selected this Armandii. At the moment, the picture on the left is what is happening in my garden. Because suddenly after the April flowering, there comes Daphne dactylis postil comes first into flower, followed by this Armandii. And now this is September, back in flower. And I wish somebody would come and take the cutting from my garden and propagate this Armandii. It's a wonderful one. Look at it. Just beautiful. But like all evergreens, and particularly Armandii, planted in a position where you will not see the lower part of the stems. It tends to get bare, tends to get brown leaves, so you need to hide it with, you know, the idea of plant a shrub at the base of a clematis, not only to prevent transpiration or loss of water, but also to hide the low-growing stems that are brown and withered looking. It makes, again, common sense. First arrived from New Zealand. God, when I saw it at the base of the Alps there, I was in absolute delight when I saw it. You know, I grew it, and I don't remember, I think about 10 years ago, on the 26th of December, we call it Stephen's Day in Dublin, you call it the Boxing Day, I got up and looked out, the frost had cut it. It was a mass of brown pulp. Ever since then, my Fustulae doesn't seem to do well, but I planted a new one with Hosta halcyon at the base of it. Look, can you see that? Just divine. Just divine. And it has done very well. And funny, it came back through the 2010 winter. I was sure I would lose it. I didn't. And then this is something I would love to boast about. When I didn't have money, I threw a packet of macropetla seed into a tray, and I selected this macropetla. It's nearly 38 years old. And I grew it in a large terracotta pot. And every time I would say to my late husband, what am I going to wear? He said, wear a pot of macropetla, because 100 pounds of pot cost me. So I was supposed to buy some outfit, and instead I came home with this pot. So every time I say, what will I wear? Oh, the macropetla pot. So there is a macropetla, a tribute to my own late husband. And look at it. I selected it, and I won't let anybody grow anything from the seed, because they destroy it. And the problem, I put this slide to show you how the base of even the well-grown alpinas, macropetlas, alpinas only have 4 sepals or 4 tepals, macropetlas will have many. The lower branches tend to get bare. So you need to plant it. If you're growing it on an obelisk or a wall, it's a jolly good idea to plant it, something in front of it to hide it. But there comes a stage in your life, it doesn't matter, because you're happy to look at the plant that you selected, and you grew with such care. So who cares what it's wearing? Or what it's not wearing? The seeds of this came from Sweden for me to grow, Clematis coreana, and I love the sepals, I love the spots, and I love the way the petiole holds the flower, and the pendulous nature, Clematis coreana. There's a lot of selected cultivars from it, but if you get the actual coreana growing, the only thing Roy might explain to us later on, I hope I don't put him in a difficult place, no matter what I do, the leaves are yellowy. So there is a question to be answered. Of all the alpinas I've grown over 40 years, Francis Willis, if you remember, I think Sir Cedric Morris, am I right, Mike? Who introduced that? It's a beautiful, beautiful blue. And I wouldn't grow that plant with any other shrub, tree, or anywhere. Grow it on its own. Certain plants must never be grown in company of others, and Francis Willis is one of them. Just elegance oozes out of it. And again, the pendulous nature of it. It's so gentle, so elegant. This is another lovely double alpina, plena, and the lot of bare stems. The plant is nearly 26 years old. I grow it through a hydrangea, Aisha, because a lot of the stems are all bare, but each year it does a good account for itself. Look at it. And once again, I keep asking myself, why are we falling in love with all these enormous plate-shaped large cultivars? Maybe when you're young, when you're full of youth, you want to flaunt it all. And later on in life, it's simply beautiful. Beautiful. I think anything I'm saying is my own observation. You don't have to agree with me. As I get so older, and I'm hoping I live into the 80s, this is the hairstyle I want for myself. So I can run around and say, I can have any old hairstyle, it doesn't matter, but look at it. I don't understand why the hairdressers come into the gardens of Clematarians and say, could we take these lights and put them on the window? Look at it. So I don't grow clematis just for the foliage, the form and shape of the flower or the color. There's a lot more going on here, secret hairdressers at work. And every morning, you know, you'll have to go and look what's happening. I have to pay tribute to one wonderful Clematarian, the late Vince Denny. Manchester, station master, he and his wife gave us some exceptional clematis. And any time I had the privilege of staying with them, Vince will talk through the night, asking questions about botany, about nectaries, about this, that, and the other. And he was passionate about texensis, and this came from the Denny's camp, Broughton Ride. Look at it. That is the April flowers. That's the September. So, same plant. And I wouldn't use my secateurs and pruners in a hurry, because if you cut too much away, you will have cut the old shoots coming into flower in September. But year after year, the September flowers, I think, is much bigger and longer than the April ones. But I made a huge mistake. Confession. You'll see that plant. I had planted a montana on the other side of the trellis, and the montana tend to engulf the mountain drive. And this year I decided I will put a stool in front of the two plants, separate the two. And I took all the montanas away from Broughton Drive. And that took a lot of work. It was worth doing. Chisenensis, as the name suggests, China. This reminds me of my own family. We're a small family, my husband, late husband, daughter, and myself. Every time they flower in trees, I greet them and I pay tribute to them. And again, I wanted to look at the stalks of the flowers, the petioles of the flowers, and pendulous. To the point my daughter said one day, why this hang up about pendulous? Maybe because I'm small, maybe because it's easy to look at it. I don't know. You don't have to have explanation for everything. It just appeals to my eye. And I wanted to, and then I got my students to do a survey of the angle at which all these plants, the stalk comes up, same thing. Incredible. So we think we have arrived. Plants arrived a long time ago. Look at this. The seed, glistening. And some of my non-gardening, non-Clematarian pals will come to the garden. And if they've been to the hairdresser, they touch their own hair. I've seen it time and again. They suddenly sort of, I see them, well, I don't go to the hairdresser, but they have been to the hairdresser, and then they, you know, it's just fantastic study of secret hairdressers among clematis. Lemon bells from the same sort of plant, Chisenensis, from North Korea, really, via Sweden, into University of British Columbia, into Dublin for trialing, and look what I have. The redness is intense when you grow it in bright sunshine. So I have a Schefflera, I'm boasting now, Schefflera taiwaniana growing beside lemon bells on an arch. So the lemon bells rises through the large, elegant leaves, foliage of the Schefflera, up the arch, hangs down. All this happened by accident, not by design, because I garden in a small space. So you walk around with a butter plant, where will it go, where will it go, bang, 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 and then dig out somebody, put it somewhere else. This goes on endlessly. These are the joys of gardening. Not looking at glamorous pictures, not even listening to people like me, but just to have the joy of wandering around and then looking at the clock and saying, good God, 4 hours gone, and what did I achieve? Nothing. Joy. And on the left, Chisenensis love child, on the right, lemon bells. Pick your choice. I'll grow both. Amelanchier canadensis supports 6 different early garden clematis for me. You see the fruit of the amelanchier on the left. But I've run out of space now. And then lemon bells which are allowed to grow through the Schefflera. Elegance, glamour, and if I may bold enough to say, even sex going on in the garden, secret sex all the time. Small flower clematis, early then we come to, I'm doing all right for time, Brian. Montana group. That is the one, Roy. Have a look at this. Montana Alexander was sent to me from Sweden by Dr. Magnus Johnson. And then University of Calcutta Botanic Garden sent me the Clematis montana. I had no room. I had an English friend who had a lovely granite wall, so she planted the montana from India there. I planted the montana Alexander in my garden. And then one day, at the foot of the both in my friend's garden and there, we found 2 seedlings. This is from the original montana from North India. But I am loath to introduce plants in a hurry, name them. I'm growing this montana now, and I think it's a better looking montana in many ways than the montana that came from North India. And I compared that with montana grandiflora. I compared that with montana Alexander. That definitely, if I had time, like another day, we can go through all the montanas. But for the time being, maybe some nurserymen might propagate it. But look at the shape of the flower. Look at the stamens, the right in the middle. And then, you know, there are some wonderful montana. The foliage is lovely, and Frida is one I would select. It is not as rampant, and everybody books. You know the books, what they say. God, I could kill some of the authors. Grow montana on an ugly shed. Grow montana to hide an ugly building. And I have a small garden, and I am growing a montana, and it's so glamorous and so beautiful. I have montana my seedling, and I have montana Frida, and montana Frida grows with Acca celoviana. Okay? Go and do your Googling and find out what that is. And then, from the same stable as which Denny's comes Broughton Star. And I've always said, I think Maureen Hudson, who is sitting there, in her old garden, I said it should be grown on a lower level in a row, so that you can look at this flower. And I took this in one of our members, NPS members in Isle of Wight, Joan Cooper, and she grows it with the Amelia grandiflora. But how she sees the Amelia coming into flower, I don't know. I didn't ask. But this is what I took in her garden in Isle of Wight. Wonderful, wonderful clematis. And then Marjorie. Jolly good cultivar. Very good. and the doubles. So look at the way the sepals have come up. And once again, I strongly recommend these wonderful flowers to be grown at a lower level, so it doesn't run away from you. Never mind the wretched books. Don't have to hide any shed. Grow them and enjoy them. I arrived in Portland, Oregon 3 years ago, and this lady has asked the lecture organizers that they must bring Mary Toomey to see her Marjorie. It cost her $25,000 on the left to build that structure to grow and she was proud that she did this because afternoon tea will be served in this structure. And I had been warned by others to show surprise and get out. Because all that got me going and telling grow it on a lower level. But on the other hand, to full marks to her, the sides of the structure. So so if you have some money, you can either leave a legacy for some garden or you can grow your fontana. Now we come to the next group of plants, Caraclifolia, Integrifolia. I know this alone will take a whole lecture. As I said at the beginning, if you have any questions on this, ask the Lordship himself, Mr. Mike Brown, with the National Collection. But I have to show you this one. Everybody knows Caraclifolia. Yesterday in Hester Cove, walking along one section, I saw, in fact, one of my friends drew my attention to it, masses and masses of Caraclifolia growing. Clematis Caraclifolia, the flowers are separate. If you read Floyd Lancaster's Travels in China, he gives a very good description of tubulosa Caraclifolia. There's a monoecious, dioecious. In tubulosa, which I think is lovely, the male and the female flowers are carried on separate plants. In Caraclifolia, the male and female flowers are carried on the same plant, but separately. So you need to, and the Fosteri group I talked about, there are male flowers and female flowers on separate plants as well. If I were to go into all that, we need 1 year. So there is tubulosa. I love this blue. I love this blue. And then out of this Caraclifolia plant, which is much a bit rougher than tubulosa, came this selection by a gentleman called Jan Kopma in Holland, and he sent me the plant for trialing. I call it a steel blue, very low growing, clumping plant. I think I gave you one.
Yes.
It's a wonderful plant, Clematis New Love, and every year I take X amount of the clump and give it to other people. And right now, it's a masses and masses of flowers, Clematis New Love. It's a selection from Caraclifolia, and that is the way it flowers. So even if you don't want to grow the large varieties up here or down here, the herbaceous varieties are good. Now, I don't think I'll ever say this, but this is grown in a tribute to my sister-in-law, who lives in Greece. Her name is Cassandra. And Marcus Dancer from Hampshire, he sent me this plant, and he said, try this, Mary, and I would recommend it, and Mike Brown agreed with me. An excellent herbaceous cultivar, Clematis Cassandra. And beautiful, beautiful steel blue. Just beautiful. So this is where I think good gardeners would agree with me. You need that eye to look at the difference in color, difference in shape, difference in form. So how 5,000 cultivars came in a short space of time beats me hollow. And these are another 2 plants, and please, I'm going to be running out of time. Go and look at this stance. It's another plant. I saw it growing everywhere brilliantly in America. They're coming on. Americans are coming on. I mean that in a nice way. God, you be careful, boy, eh? And I took this in one of the, I think, outside California, in a botanic garden, tubulosa, and then Mike Brown's beautiful Clematis integrifolia on the left. Now my problem with the herbaceous clematis is, some of them are so tall. Why would I call them herbaceous? I understand the leaf petiole is not modified to become a tendril. I also understand new shoots push forth from below the soil level. But should I call the tall varieties of Clematis minus what we call the leaf modification of the tendril herbaceous? I'm not sure. I'm not really sure. Alienus birch is another lovely one, quite a vigorous one. And look at, I'm back again to my pendulous. Heraclifolia, Shibulosa, and then we have the Diversifolia. If you're not interested in the classification in the botanical sense, forget about it. But Heather Herschel is a good, I find it good. And I grow this with Sarcophaga humilis. And it has worked like a dream. Now we come to the late Clematis. I wouldn't be without it. 27 years on in my garden. In spite of a dry summer, done well. I had the pleasure of meeting Betty Corning. And she found us as a young bride on the roadside in Albany and sent it to Harvard Arboretum, obviously a seedling of its seller, and Betty Corning is an upright, smart, I call it, Clematis. Prone to mildew, but you must grow it where the wind is blowing, and it flowers non-stop from mid-July for me. At the moment it's in flower. I saw this plant, Spinosa violacea, in a heather bed, allowed to grow as a ground cover. And most of the heathers were golden heathers. And the lady let it grow over it, and then she pulls them all back and cuts it right back to about 12 inches from the ground. Lovely. So you don't need to always, if I may use the expression with again great respect, crucify the Clematis. Just don't pin it against anything. Let it gently flow. That is why you couldn't have a manicured garden in that sense. Although I know a young lady who grows them, and it's all beautiful in her garden. Flowered beautifully this year for me, Madam Julia Caravan. I grow this with Cercis canadensis Avondale. So when the Cercis has come into flower, the Judas tree, and I've given it a good support beside the Cercis, and so the bare Cercis tree with the foliage is then adorned by Madam Julia Caravan. So over a period of time, if somebody asked me, why would I think I know enough about Clematis? It took me 40 years odd to understand plant relationships. And still I make mistakes. And this is something I'm going to discuss with Roy. You couldn't grow Clematis with willy-nilly with other plants. Because beneath the soil, there are chemicals, there are all sorts of things happening. There is, again, I'm going to ask you to go and read more about this, find out what is called allelopathy. The oak and the ash cannot grow under each other's shade. There is some repulsion there. So not all plants can grow in harmony in a garden. And therefore you need to find out what is going on. And beneath the soil cannot be a very extensive laboratory. Because we can't keep digging up to see what's happening all the time. So only by observation of what's happening above the ground, you could do some experiment. So think about it. And then on a radio program in Canada, some smart Alec asked me, what do you grow in Ireland, in praise of Ireland? Gee, I couldn't. A dash of the Hibernian green. Suddenly I said, grow Alba luxurians and a dash of the Hibernian green. And that's it. So I grow this in honor of my adopted island of Ireland, and there it is. But if you over-fertilize it, it becomes pure white. And if you're in love with doubles, PP, Papiria plena elegans. I have to run now. All my life of adoring, admiring, enjoying, and being in absolute ecstasy about Clematis, The one thing I wanted to do was a hedge of Viticelus. And here it is. A wonderful botanical artist in Ireland, when I told her about it, she said, grow it in my garden, Mary. Here it is. So every November, you take your secateurs or pruners, cut it down, and on both sides, you can see the hedge. Nothing else but Viticelus. And then the Tangutica group and the Texans is, I'm watching, Brian. Tangutica. Brickell, you remember him?
Yes.
Christopher Brickell. When he wrote an article for the British Chemical Society Journal, he did one on the Tangutica, and he sent me a slide where the Tangutica in Tambuk Mountain grows like a mound. And this is what the real Tangutica should look like. I'm afraid that plant is being ruined by growing it from seed. Time and time again they have destroyed the Tangutica. But that plant came to me from Estonia, and I'm delighted. I'm growing it in a pot for fear I'd lose it. Waterberry, gardens of Waterberry, Bill Mackenzie. Ruined again, growing it from seed. But that is the one it should look like. Selected from Tibetana subspecies vernii, from an original plant. I decided to take the original plant out. It became unruly, but found a seedling at the base of it, and now I'm growing on the road outside. I've run out of space. The curb has a hornbeam tree. County council planted the hornbeam. I removed the lower branches of the hornbeam and made it into a standard. And 2 years ago, I was coming back from church, and the county council men were cutting and pulling them down. I couldn't open my mouth. And I said to my husband, my plant is gone, and then he said, don't despair. After breakfast, go and have a look what happens. They had left the bottom bit of it. Back again. So you couldn't really kill a clematis. You don't tell me you couldn't grow it or kill it. You can't. Texans, the Scarlet Lady, and John Treasure, those of you who remember Treasures of Tenbury. We need men like John Treasure and Christopher Lloyd to say, yuck, throw it out. That is what they did when they looked at new cultivars. I came across some handwritten notes of both John Treasure and Christopher Lloyd, and the number of times they've said, out. The wonderful Scarlet Lady, as John Treasure called it, the seed heads. And this is what Vince Denny, my wonderful, wonderful clementarian, was wondering, are there nectaries in this? I'm going to have a look at this, Princess Diana, and now the daughter-in-law, Princess Kate. But with all due respect to Kate Middleton, Princess Diana is a better cultivar. I didn't tell her that. You see, it's grown and bred in Holland. Wonderful clematis, Etoile rose. No mildew this year. No, the only thing that happened this year was with the absence of water, the flowers got smaller. And finally they come to the last of the small flower at the foothills of the cascade. Like our traveler's joy, I was delighted to see Western Virgin and Rector, Toniflora, a good one. At the moment, it's coming into flower in my garden, but I remember Chris Saunders from Knockcuts, was it, telling me that in very cold parts of Britain, this plant wouldn't do very well because it comes into flower so late. Patanini is a good cultivar, a good species, and try and grow it on a black surface. My friend Wendy Ward, the artist, grow it against a black limestone thing, and it looks very well. And This is another clematis. As Christopher Lloyd said, why do they call it rector? It's never erect, but it is called rector, and we have to support it. But the flowers are good. There we are. But it needs to support it very much. So in our gardens, and I hope I have 5 minutes to do that. 3 years for a clematis to settle down, because it takes that length. And you'll have to wait and patiently allow it to grow, fertilize it, bring it along. And then Nigel Cornwall came up with this steady stream of cultivars. So you need to decide what you want to grow. We have become giddy, we have become just anything will do, glamour. No, you need to select it and grow it very well. So, as an elderly lady in Kent said to me, good plants are for giving away, bad plants are for throwing away. So don't even allow some of the plant to rear its head over the soil. But this is what you see in Chelsea, and you think the clematis is going to be like this. I'm sorry, no. Hundreds of clematis spots in there. Beautiful basal shoots. You can look at it, you're all experienced gardeners. So when you grow a clematis, the idea is to encourage small good shoots coming from beneath the soil, as many of them as possible. And then I've run out of space for obelisks and all that, so any 6 bamboo canes will do. And then there is a vigorous ones and not so vigorous ones. Arabella is an excellent cultivar. And then planting it against a mature shrub at a distance. And they'll be all marching to eat all your new shoots. I'm just going to go through this. I have 5 minutes, Brian. I love that man. He wrote a beautiful book that William Robinson and him have given us so much to learn. And there I grow it in his honor, Markham Spring. Broughton Bride from Vince Denny's table. Jackmanii still continues forevermore. The best of the lot of cultures. Durandii, excellent. I grow that one again with the Sakapuka. Look at it. And the heather herself. This is my love. My second best love. From Japan. Look. Wonderful makes an ugly exit. Your choice is yours. And my young daughter very brutally said to me, she looks like crushed red violet, but too old for you, mother. The exit is not very good. Arabella. This year I decided to go as a ground cover. Work like a dream. Ground cover. Every one of them you're seeing now, I've grown them. So if it goes wrong, you can take it up with me. Philadelphus belletoile, a beautiful, beautiful plant, supports a lot of my clematis. That came from Russia, jubilantly. I grow these two together. From Japan, wonderful. From Japan, wonderful. Dream achieved, a black sambucus, and it all rose. I grow Little Nell because I think it's nice to be saying Little Nell. Everybody, every garden grower like Lancaster should have this plant. Sorbus cashmeriana. At the moment, that is the way it looks. And I grow Polish spirit because Polish spirit comes late in the plant. lovely, this is called a herbaceous clematis. I grow this under Ilex Golden King, having made the plant a standard. It has done exceptionally well this year, and I reckon it's because of a very long dormant winter followed by a warm dry summer, and this plant has done well. And this caused 6 different clematis in the garden. Christopher Lloyd, the late Christopher Lloyd, said he never grew Princess Diana, so I gave it him. I'm very proud that he sort of said, good plant. Jan Popma is a good plant. Very good plant. Look at it. I tried different ways of growing it. Andante, a wonderful herbaceous clematis from Japan. I don't know, I haven't checked the plant finder. It's well worth being brought to Britain. And I think Jennifer Harmer gave me this nuclear David, and Andante floats with him. Caillou is a good cultivar. Take these ideas home as much as I would. I saw Clematis Veitchiana on the table at the reception here today. The Clematis Veitchiana doesn't have the sepals on the top, whereas the Rehederiana is a very large cultivar, has the top of the sepals growing there. Definitely hairdressers. No, I still settle for the left one. And finally, after 40 odd years, I walked into a friend's garden after the tsunami of hit my country in Sri Lanka, and I saw this plant in its dry